Good morning and welcome to the pre-agenda interview for Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. We have one appointment for the Commission on Human Relations. Namita, would you like to join us up here? Namita Dwarkan. And you can sit right here next to our city clerk. Yes, thank you. Anywhere along that side of the table. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'll let you get settled. Will the clerk please read the title of the bill?
Bill 1543, Resolution appointing Namita Dwarkanath as a member of the Commission on Human Relations for a term set to expire December 31st, 2027.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we're here to, so that the public can find out a little bit more about who is being appointed to this and voted on for this very important commission, which indeed is independent in a lot of ways from the rest of city government and quasi-judicial in a lot of ways. So if you can tell us a little bit about your background and your reason for wanting to serve on this commission, that would be really helpful as a start.
Happy to speak a little more clearly into the mic. So I came to Pittsburgh about 5 years ago now at this point, and before that I had worked in both Philadelphia and in Washington, D.C., focused primarily on gender equity work and working with victims and survivors of crime. And I found that there was a tremendous overlap in the work that I was doing in terms of inequity being such a prominent source of disruption in neighborhoods, right? And that work was what brought me to Pittsburgh to work in the Division of Adolescent Medicine for 3.5 years, doing anti-violence research and equity-based anti-violence research, using our understandings of how gender norms and racial norms could be disruptive to our communities at large, not only because they created inequities, but because they could be sources of violence, to develop, test, and promulgate interventions that were youth-run and youth-led across 42 neighborhoods, I want to say, which was a tremendous experience and such a great way to get to know the city as well. And I really fell in love with Pittsburgh in the process, and I fell in love with this idea that equity and civil rights are a precursor not only for us to move forward as a society that values all of its members equally, but to move forward harmoniously, right? Recognizing that when we have these hierarchies and power structures that create imbalance, we create a culture that makes it more challenging for people to have the resources that they need. And when people don't have resources, they may resort to forms of violence, forms of crime, other ways that our communities are disrupted and torn apart. So it becomes a very self-fulfilling cycle. So that was what brought me to Pittsburgh. I did that work for 3.5 years. I loved it. I realized that I wanted to keep doing that work in some capacity. So I went to law school, where I am now. And I'm also finishing up my master's of public health to continue on that track. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your willingness to serve despite your busy schedule and many, many responsibilities you currently have. When it comes to the work that you've done previously and this work on the commission, do you see any kind of direct or even indirect line to the work that the commission does or can potentially do and violence interruption, which is such a, and like the factors that lead to it, and all the myriad ways that we can possibly affect change in that way? Is there any relation there, or is there anything that you think from that particular background the commission could even expand upon?
Yeah, that's such a great question. You know, I think that civil rights work and the promotion of civil rights is anti-violence work in such a core and crucial way, because I think when we recognize collective dignity, we move toward a culture of broader peace, right? And so while I recognize that the commission's scope is largely enforcement of civil rights in anti-discrimination senses, I think that is a really core puzzle piece of doing the work of making our communities safer, right? By making our communities feel valued, feel like they have spaces to go to when they feel that their rights are being trampled, that they're frustrated, that they're not being represented adequately.
Mm-hmm. And then kind of related to that, I guess, whether it's those who feel their civil rights are being trampled or people who just are maybe either new to Pittsburgh or are among the audiences that the city government struggles to reach and doesn't always reach. Do you have ideas in the ways, well, I'll just step back and say, anytime that we've passed, and I've authored a few of them, adding an additional protected class to our city code and allowing for an additional group of people to be protected from discrimination directly related to the CHR based on employment and or housing and or public accommodations. It also serves as a great reminder that this office and this commission exists and that you're protected and that you have a place to go other than, unlike a lot of cities, you have a place to go other than the state. You have an actual city commission. So I think the struggle is, how do we continue to reach new audiences as they either move to Pittsburgh, and hopefully have lots of new Pittsburghers moving here, or people who are, historically disenfranchised and maybe out of touch with city government. Any thoughts there about the work that the staff or the board of CHR can do to reach these audiences and inform them of their rights?
Yeah, absolutely. I think know your rights education is so crucial, and I think it's something that we can do a lot earlier, particularly for young people. One of the things that I saw working with youth in Pittsburgh is that I often were working with them as they began their first employment opportunities, and they had no idea what their rights were, right, under their employers. A lot of them were, the local Marshalls or the McDonald's or whatever the case may be as a first job, but they had no sense of what rights they were supposed to be afforded, what their pay schedule was supposed to look like, how they were supposed to be treated at work, what their hours were supposed to be. And they're 15, 16 years old. They don't realize that these are questions that they should always be asking. And that's a very small example. I think that, folks going through the home buying process, the rental process, there's so many points of intervention where it can be extraordinarily helpful to provide this rights-based education that I think we're missing. And so I think we need to work with local community leaders in particular, who already have these relationships, who know the folks who are moving through these processes and can help support their education to make sure that they're moving through these processes as informed as possible.
Wonderful, thank you. I don't have any further questions, not to put my colleague, Councilman Bruce Kraus, on the spot, who we're now joined by. But we have a candidate for the Commission on Human Relations, and if you have any questions for Namita.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, and I apologize for being a little bit late.
No problem at all.
The brief history of the Human Relations Commission, how do I want to say this? The Mayor's Commission on Human Relations was created out of Kaufman's department store. The African-American employees were only permitted back of the house jobs. They were not permitted front of the house jobs. And they went on strike. And it's very, very much noted in the annals of history. And so when that strike was resolved and the employees won the right to, well, I should say the right was recognized, they already had the right to have front of the house jobs. It was created then as the Mayor's Commission on Human Relations. When we chartered back in 70-something, I should know that. When we chartered, it was taken out of the mayor's office to show its independence and became the Commission on Human Relations, which you are now going to be a part of. That's pretty amazing stuff, yeah. So I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts about serving on the commission, what you feel you will bring to it, and I'd be happy to listen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As I was telling Councilwoman Strasburger, a lot of my history is actually in anti-violence work that's connected with equity work, so really looking at that particular intersection. But I'm also really grateful to have, through that work, built a lot of connections with local communities and local community leaders, and I would love to be able to continue those relationships and develop those relationships to ensure that there continues to be rights-based education in communities that have been historically marginalized, to Councilwoman Strasburger's point, but also to develop relationships and a sense of trust between this commission and those folks, right? I think that a lot of people who've been historically marginalized in the city can really hesitate to bring forth these claims of discrimination because they feel it puts the spotlight on them in an already vulnerable time. Yeah. And I think establishing a continued relationship of trust by having a commission full of people who really care about, not the bottom political line, but about these relationships between the city and the people that it serves is really critical for this work to actually functionally manifest. Anti-discrimination claims are treated so harshly by the courts. They're really they're scrutinized in this way that I think can make people feel very small and can make it feel like their marginalization is being justified. And I think the city is such a unique opportunity to disrupt that narrative, to take these claims very seriously, to reflect, regardless of what the outcome is, that discrimination is not something that is tolerated, in any capacity, right? Whether there's an economic part or anything else, yeah.
Certainly not here in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Thankfully,
Yes.
we have a very rich history of diversity, equity, and inclusion before that was a catchphrase. If you, I'm not sure you do, but following the national discourse, I turned 70 in 2024. I don't remember a time in my life that I have seen such deliberate division
Oh, yes.
on the social issues as political fodder as what I am seeing today. It's a very, very dangerous time. Sorry. That was good too. No, it's a very, very dangerous time, a very dangerous time. And I'm quite frankly, I don't know how we are able to turn that around.
Right.
Yeah. So on a local level here, as you were speaking, I heard you use the term or the word relationship multiple times. I'm a very, very big proponent in that our ability to be successful is directly connected to our ability to be able to build relationships, right? And cross aisles, if you will, for a lack of a better way of saying that. So the Human Relations Commission has had a little bit of a bumpy ride in the last couple years. And I'm curious, I'm not asking you to, I'm not asking you to, whatever I'm not asking you to do, but I'm just curious what your thoughts might be to bring a level of cohesiveness and unity and purpose to the commission, sort of a reuniting of the commission.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. And I don't think it's a question that, can be answered alone. I think it's a commission-wide question. But I think that the city is really uniquely positioned in this moment with the Office of Equal Protection opening, with new changes, new faces, all of these things, but also so much wonderful institutional knowledge to be able to bridge some of these gaps and bridge some of these relationships and move forward with a concrete purpose-driven mission, right? The commission has an established goal, and I think that it's critical for however the commission moves forward to be very singularly focused on that goal, which is not about ourselves as a commission, but about the people that are being served in the city of Pittsburgh.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I may end my comments there, so I know we have time around the meeting. Did you wish to make comment?
Yeah, we've been joined by Councilwoman Barb Warwick. Thank you for joining. And
Thank
if
you.
you have any questions for Namita for
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I
Commissioner
know I was late. I
Human
had a
Relations.
morning thing. So yeah, but thank you for coming and serving on the commission. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here,
Yep.
Councilwoman.
I'll just echo that. Thank you for your willingness to serve again. And I'll just also say that District 8 was sorry to lose you as a constituent. I hope that you're very happy in District 4, and I think that it should bring some consolation to and some joy to the people who represent south of the river that you will be a commissioner serving and representing south of the river. So
Very kind, thank you.
thank you again. Any closing statements or things we should have asked you?
No, I don't think so. I think
All
that's
right.
great. Thank
Well,
you.
with that, I will move to adjourn this interview.
Thank you. Motion to
Motion to adjourn.
adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting for Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. Our first order of business is roll call. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Reverend Burgess, Mr. Coghill, Ms. Gross, Mr. Kraus.
Here.
Mrs. Kel Smith, Ms. Strasburger. Ms. Warwick.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Lavelle, Chair.
Here.
5 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before city council, and profanity will not be permitted. Please restate your name and provide your neighborhood for the record. After you are called, you will be given 3 minutes to speak. Our first registered speaker is Dr. Ronald Lynn Miller.
U.S. candidate for president 2024. 412-969-7997 is my primary Pittsburgh telephone number. The council concern seems to be equity regarding Aboriginal, Indigenous, Native American Pittsburghers. I don't know exactly how you're going to translate that into something that is very practical, but I'll tell you this, that in Oklahoma, 43% of the state is now under tribal control. So if you translate that into the city of Pittsburgh, very interesting what you're doing there, Mr. Kraus. You see, these councilor citizens just go on their devices while citizens speak. I just find that completely disgraceful. 43% of the city of Pittsburgh, if you want to take that seriously, would mean 3 districts would be missing. And in particular, as Ms. Strasburger should be aware, the University of Pittsburgh sits on particularly important land to the people who are of the descendants of these peoples. Another council concern is the safety and security of this locality. I mentioned this morning. Pittsburgh is a target in part because of the biological safety lab. No citizens were invited to comment on its emergence or its continuance, and I think that you should make a report, Ms. Strasburger, about that. The Supercomputer Center, again, no citizens were invited to comment on its inception. And the installation of the U.S. Cyber Command within the Defense Network of the United States. Again, no citizens were asked about these matters. That's your responsibility, Council, to pressure externals, meaning the federal government in this case, from doing these things. Now, Pittsburghers are confronted with these buildings. I mentioned this morning BNY Mellon, One Oxford Center, and UPMC Tower that are targets. 9/11 struck a very visceral chord in the United States. That can happen here. Drones can be driven into these buildings, and if that happens, the probability of many of the analysts I have spoken with is that they will fall in such a way that this building will be destroyed, that the county courthouse will be destroyed, that the county business entity will be destroyed, the government of the city will be destroyed. You need to pass an ordinance to deal with this problem.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Chief Pomai Chakman Yahelihi. I see him on.
I can't even unmute myself.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay, great, because it wouldn't give me the option to unmute. I guess they unmuted me. Thank you. And look, heck, I look at everyone, the light me honors, the light me you. I'm glad to be here today, especially seeing that there's interviews being done for this commission position. Jen Hammond was a wonderful commission for the Commission on Human Rights. The Pittsburgh Commission on Human Rights, and he did a great job. He worked with Indigenous people, speaking with us and listening to us, hearing our concerns, and understanding that there needs to be something done to protect the rights of Indigenous people here in the city of Pittsburgh. I implore City Council to really take their time to look at this legislation that is before you, because it was not just our people who wrote this legislation. We wrote this legislation in conjunction with the commission. And in that writing, there was a mutual understanding and a coming to terms and a coming to a peaceful situation where we understood that everyone has the right to be protected here in this area, and everyone has a right to be who they are in this area and identify with their ancestors. And so what Dr. Ronald just spoke about, as far as, indigenous lands and territories, all of the Americas is indigenous land. And we have shared our lands with everyone that have come upon our shores. It's just that it's gotten to a point where we have been marginalized so much that we're invisible. And so we're here to say that we're not invisible. We are here, and we've worked in many communities because we're scattered. We're in all of these communities. Communities identified as the Black community, as the brown community, as the immigrant community. All these communities, we're in these communities, and so we want to allow ourselves to be a part of discussions, and we want to be a part of solutions. Right? Because we're also here to bring solutions to the many problems that the city is facing as it relates to different issues: housing, land access for agriculture, green spaces, protection, police brutality. All of these things, we experience them too. So we're saying now's the time. It's a great opportunity for city council to do something bold, something noble that many of your noble ancestors did when they asked for us to treaty with them, so that we can stop the many wars that were happening all throughout this part of the Americas, North America. Many Indian wars happened here. So let's move forward. Let's be honest in our oaths to this Constitution that we swear to, and do the right thing. Protect the rights of Indigenous people as you protect the rights of everyone in this area that as Pittsburgh, and we daringly refer to it still as the Delaware Territory. And I yield. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Bill Schlattner.
Good morning. My name is Bill Schlachter. I live in the Mount Washington community. I'll be brief in my remarks. I've spoken previously to council regarding the short-term rental agreement bill, which relates to the Airbnb tragedy that happened over a year ago. And City Council continues on a path that really does not look at the bill in a holistic way, that looks at it from a residential neighborhood perspective. The current bill, as it states right now, creates a registry and a fee. At the end of the day, that's not really enough to address the challenges of Airbnb. If you look around the country, city after city after city, including in Philadelphia, has created the ordinance that it has to be a primary residence, which was when Airbnb was created, that was really the purpose of it. What's happening right now, very unfortunately in our communities, particularly up here in Mount Washington, is that when houses are up for sale, corporations are buying these properties, taking them out of the hands of families competing for these properties. And when the corporation acquires it, they turn it into an Airbnb, which essentially is not even in the standing of the zoning ordinance. As it states right now, no hotels, no bed and breakfasts are allowed on these properties. But we're allowing Airbnbs where people don't even live there in a primary residence way. It's an extreme sleight of hand that's happening right now in the city of Pittsburgh. The residential zoning and the commercial zoning are two different things, but the Airbnbs that are just exclusively being used by corporations is a true sleight of hand. And it's actually destroying the community fabric, and it's also creating and spurring on the affordable housing crisis. Because the corporations, when at the end of the day, when they're bidding against a family, trying to get a place in the community, they're going to be outbid every time. And then that is not a space that's in the market of somebody who's an active participant. There is nobody living in these places full time. And the Airbnb bill or short-term rental bill really needs to be rethought, and it really needs to look at it from this holistic way like the rest of the country has been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chief Allah Jel Jeep Chanel Keen, Aborigine American.
Greetings, and Lakalakain. I am a Aborigine American matriarch, and my title is Chief Yajalaji Chanel Keen, located in the Delaware Territory, as you all would call it, Pittsburgh. My statement today is to invoke my people's constitutional indigenous rights, and I am encouraging City Council to pass my people's legislation. The legislation is intended to ensure the protection, security, and safety of our people against discrimination, forced assimilation, eugenics, and genocide. The title of the legislation is Pittsburgh City Code Municipal Title VI, Article 12, Rights of Indigenous People. Be one of the first amongst yourselves and amongst your many ancestors to honor your oath to the Constitution, to honor your ancestors' oath to the Constitution. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, and excluding Indians not taxed. Bringing forth, referencing the House Congress Resolution 331, as it was referenced in the beginning through an interview of relationships. House Congress Resolution 331, a concurrent resolution to acknowledge the contribution of the Iroquois Confederacy of Nations to develop the development of the United States Constitution, and to reaffirm the continuing government-to-government relationship between Indian tribes and the United States established in the Constitution. So again, I'm encouraging City Council to pass the legislation on the protection and the rights of Aboriginal Americans, my people, and I yield.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Chief Ikahana.
Greetings and good day. My title is Chief Ikahana, the Grand Inca of the Iroquois Confederacy of the Aboriginal American people. And today I would like to speak on behalf of my ancestors, my noble warrior ancestors, the Onkwe Homeway, the Rotonosuni, the people of the Delaware, the Mingos, the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Seneca, the Choctaw, the Lenni Lenape, to name a few. We are the indigenous people of America, and we are still here. We are asking City Council to acknowledge that we are here and to create protection that will keep us and our land sacred for time immemorial. We need these protections expeditiously, for our people are being forcibly made to identify as Negro, Black, and colored, social political constructs created by eugenics. Right now, currently, non-Indigenous people are given protection under a colorful flag that once was for the youth, children to identify with, the colors as they learn. But there is a commission that has been created for the LGBTQ. I'm not saying it shouldn't exist, but what I'm saying is you challenge us when it comes to our identity, but yet you yield to the fact that whether someone was born male or female and decide to change their identity, that you're making and paving the way for them, but stifling our growth and our ability to be us on our sacred land. We didn't ask for these infractions. We didn't ask for suppression of our identity, nor did we ask for European invasions to come pillage and plummet our land and destroy our sacred monuments. What we're asking for is simple. According to Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 in the Constitution, we are not to be handled, censured. We are excluding Indians not taxed, represented in the Constitution. So if, according to your Home Rule Charter, your actions are to be subordinate to the Constitution, and you're not acting in that manner, your feelings do not supersede our rights. We are imposing our right to be. We have a right to live. We have the right to be free. We have a right to be autonomous in our own land. We have the right to self-identify, not forcibly identify, not forcibly be assimilated into a system to which we do not belong. We're asking for these protections. It's nothing new. These are the way, this is the
Thank you very much. That exhausts our list of registered speakers. If there's anyone in chambers wishing to speak, please come forward at this time. Provide your name and neighborhood for the record. You'll also be given 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Rick Knorr. I'm from Brookline, and I'm here today again to talk about a rapid transit system between the airport and downtown Pittsburgh. The reason I'm doing this is because I have been coming down this neighborhood for 40 years. And when I mean this neighborhood, I mean literally this neighborhood. I started working at Oxford Center in 1983 when it was under construction. I know a lot about downtown business, and what I see today in downtown is shocking to me. The vacancy rate I think can be best described as a serious recession or a Great Depression. It reminds me of the 1970s, what I witnessed down in the South Side when the steel industry collapsed. So the question is, what are we going to do to bring people into town and get back to the office? Well, I think the business dynamics have fundamentally changed as far as getting people back to the office. It's going to be a very hard task to get people back into these office buildings and to get our small business going again. So that's why I'm suggesting a rapid transit system would have a huge impact on commerce in the region, and particularly downtown Pittsburgh, and will attract flying travelers to the airport. I have mentioned before that I am well traveled. I have flown numerous times. And it's shocking to me also when you go to other airports how jammed they are, and ours, well, let's just say it's not, there's potential for growth there. And that's what I want to emphasize this again and again, to many people as I can. It seems to have popular support, and I think that popular support will grow. Again, it will take leadership, and it will take the will of the people. Thank you for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live at 715 Mercer Street. That's in the K. Leroy Irvis building up on Bedford Avenue. I didn't come down yesterday. Well, I did come down, and I was in the car. Had nowhere to park. Didn't have any money. And so confused that I go back home, and I realized that I could have parked, went to the bank and got the money and paid, but I think it wasn't meant for me to come down here. Because as I turned on Wally Avenue, we have a white man, and I'm telling you, the reason why I'm saying white so you know who I'm talking about, Stan, the produce man. When I came around the corner, he was hollering and calling my name. And I said, I'm saying, why are you calling me that? When I go over there, there's a woman, and she's having a stroke. She's really messed up, and he's holding her. He said she came, she could talk. She asked for a banana, and he said his bananas was green, but he thought that she could take a piece of fruit. He gave her the fruit, but she was shaking. She was so messed up. And then he called me, and I was trying to talk to her. She couldn't say her name. She's just looking up. And so at that time, then a white woman, I'm saying white so you understand, this white woman had come to get beets, but she stopped, and she was trying to help her. She hugged her just like I did. And I said to her, she's so frightened. I had a stroke, so I know when your brain is messing up and you can't talk or you can't do whatever, that you're scared. And I said to her, we're here. We know you're having a problem. We're calling the paramedics. So we called the paramedic. Well, the fireman came first, and they was working when they couldn't get her blood pressure. We couldn't get her to sit down. And then I started teasing her, and she did smile. I said, you got 3 men taking care of you, okay. So then when the paramedics came, that meant that when they put her on because she couldn't sit down, and she was, it's terrible when you see somebody like that. But anyway, I come to tell you, the reason why I'm saying about this white woman, she's white, seen a woman in distress, stopped, yins are down here white. I come down and tell you we need help. You don't give me help, you chase me out of here. I am sick and tired of it. I want to show you too, 2019 is when I talked to the governor and told them about how Mr. Ackland, he was here. I said, I have a problem because there's a conflict of interest about the Hill. Because he said we could have sued, but Ackland said we could have sued, but I'm not going to say they should sue. Do you understand that when they said that the police was going to come to every neighborhood, and Ms. Gross said that her and the mayor made the decision that they put Lawrenceville with the Hill, you didn't come. So you had a businessman that sold cars down on Center.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Are there any other speakers? Seeing none, that takes us to our standing committee agenda. Our first committee of the day is Finance and Law, which is chaired by myself. I'm going to skip the first bill only because it's going to be an amendment by substitution. However, I forgot to send it to the clerk's office, so I just sent it to them, so they're preparing it. So I'll go to Bill 1833 first.
Bill 1833, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Brennan Thrower in an amount not to exceed $18,000 in full and final settlement of a discharge grievance.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. And now that Luis is passing out the amendment, thank you, Luis, for the last second
Luis,
help.
thank you.
I'll go back to Bill 1752.
Bill 1752, ordinance amending the City of Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances, City of Pittsburgh Service Workers Prevailing Wage Ordinance, Title I Administrative, Article 7, Procedures, Chapter 161, Contracts, by supplementing Section 161.38.
Motion to approve with discussion, please.
Second.
Can I defer to you, Mr. Chair?
Yes, if you would be willing to offer up a motion to amend by substitution, I'll ask Ms. Reichert come to the table, and we'll then discuss.
Great. Motion to amend, please.
By substitution.
By substitution.
Thank you.
Second.
With discussion.
With discussion.
I see our solicitor is also here. Do you wish to have our solicitor at the table?
I don't believe so, but
Okay.
if necessary.
Okay. I'm going to defer to you, Mr. Chair.
If you could please introduce yourself for the record and walk us through the changes.
Sure. Thank you, Councilman. My name is Zeke Redeker. I'm the Mayor's Executive Advisor on Legal Policy. I appreciate having the time to discuss the amendments to the Service Workers Prevailing Wage Act with you today. The amendments are fairly simple. There's two of them. The first one creates a mechanism under law for the city controller to retain certain aspects of enforcement of the Service Workers Prevailing Wage Act, but then gives the Mayor's Office of Equal Protection the majority of routine enforcement duties. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that there used to be a series of very complicated requirements associated with building square footage for a building service or a food service contract to qualify as needing a prevailing wage. We have amended those so as to create a flat $100,000 contractual threshold that will trigger the Service Worker Prevailing Wage Act requirements, and I'm happy to walk you through any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councilman Cross?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Are you able to confirm, is this the outcome of some litigation around the original bill? No, it is not. Okay. I just needed to clear that up in my own mind. And so the epicenter of the reasoning behind why we are adjusting this now?
Sure. It actually goes back to a resolution that was passed by Councilman Wilson, where he inquired of the City Controller's Office the state of enforcement of the Prevailing Wage Act. This was around the turn of last year. And the City Controller issued a report that said that they did not now nor have ever had the resources to actually enforce this law. So we have worked closely with the City Controller's Office to amend the language in this legislation to bring it over into the Office of Equal Protection so that we can finally and for the first time enforce prevailing wage in the city of Pittsburgh.
Great. The lack of resources, is that personnel, or is it more, I can't think of the word I want. Is it personnel driven, the lack of resource to do this?
I can't speak to any personnel issues in the city controller's office, but what the report said was that the office was not structured to be able to do all of the things that the law required in terms of routine enforcement.
I see. That could be a very broad discussion around a multitude of ordinances this council has passed over generations that seem to languish when it comes to enforcement. That's a can of worms I will not open today. I'll stick with this bill here, but that is something that I think this council would be very interested in exploring. Appreciate you being here, and thank you for being prepared, and I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson?
Well, thanks for working on this and everything that you're doing to create that enforcement mechanism. So can you just tell me how the enforcement will work?
Yeah, so it is a complaint-based system. What will happen is through the Office of Equal Protection, we now have the investigative capacity to actually be able to run these investigations. If a worker on a city contract for building or food service believes that they're not being paid a prevailing wage, they can contact our office, they can submit a complaint. We would then initiate an investigation. And the investigation, we hope, would be able to be resolved through some form of mediation. We've noticed when we run investigations that things work best when we bring everybody to the table and we get people to agree on an outcome, but in the event that the investigation carries forward without resolution, there would then be a hearing process in place. The city controller, who was previously tasked with both running the investigation and appointing a hearing officer to hear the investigation and make a decision. Now it will be the Office of Equal Protection that will run the investigation, and the city controller will still be tasked with appointing the hearing officer so that we have that separation between those two things. We avoid a conflict of interest, and we will have a hearing as to whether or not the prevailing wage statute applies in the particular instance associated with the complaint.
And what if it's found that they're, not in compliance?
There are penalties that are laid out in the statute. I'm happy to go over them with you.
Yeah, could you just say,
sure.
It doesn't have to be exact, but I just want to.
Yeah, no, generally speaking, you have wage restitution for affected employees, liquidated damages in the amount of 3 times the wages owed, a directive to an applicable city department to withhold any payments due to the employer in the event that the employer was found liable in this situation, attorney's fees, or ultimately contract rescission.
What about future, if this is public money? And what about future, future opportunities for them to receive public funds?
So beyond what's spelled out in the statute, we don't have, we're not able to levy penalties that are not actually spelled out in the legislation. But I've found that these penalties are quite robust when compared with other similar statutes.
Okay. You said this is self-reported, so the work that the controller did in the audit, that was there was a lot of good information. Is there going to be an effort to continue that effort to see projects where public money is being put into, that we're tracking those dollars and how they're being spent?
Absolutely. And there's a requirement, like the paid sick leave statute, that when you have a contract of this type, that there actually be publicly communicated information on the job site that people are entitled to pay a prevailing wage. But one of the obstacles that we've encountered when we try to enforce these laws that have historically gone unenforced or underenforced, that not enough workers know about these laws. And so what we need to do is educate the public on their rights under law, both related to this statute and other statutes.
Okay. Well, thanks for everything you do. I think this is very important, especially since, we know that the number one way to lift someone up is to make sure they make a living wage so they can provide for themselves and their family. So thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, All those in favor on the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The bill has been amended. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Thank you very much for your work on this.
Thank you, Council. And like Councilman Wilson said, we see this as a really important piece of legislation that can ultimately improve the quality of life of working families here in Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
That will take us to our new papers, beginning with 1884.
Bill 1884, resolution authorizing the mayor and the city solicitor to enter into a professional services agreement or agreements with Hawk, McKeon, and Snissack LLP in an amount not to exceed $60,000 for a period of 1 year for professional legal services related to the Public Utility Commission.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1885.
Bill 1885, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in an amount not to exceed $5,857.01 over 1 year in favor of Ronald J. Jordan in full and final settlement of a claim for damage to his motorized wheelchair due to a malfunctioning handicap door in the city-county building.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1886.
Bill 1886, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in an amount of $3,992.26 over 1 year in favor of Ralph Howman and Gene Zeeler in full and final settlement of a claim for damage to their stopped vehicle from a city EMS vehicle.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1887.
Bill 1887, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in an amount not to exceed $3,156.41 over 1 year in favor of Robert Ireland in full and final settlement of a claim for damage to his parked vehicle from a city environmental services vehicle.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1888.
Bill 1888, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in the amount not to exceed $13,148 over 1 year in favor of Lorraine E. Mizik in full and final settlement of a claim for destruction of a residential sewer lateral due to encroachment of tree roots from a city-owned right-of-way tree.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1889.
Bill 1889, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in the amount of $7,500 over 1 year in favor of Sharon Copy, executrix of the estate of Stephen Copy, in full and final settlement of a litigation filed in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1890.
Bill 1890, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of a single payment in 2023 to Linda Lasik and Thomas J. Lasik and their attorney, G. Christopher Apesas, in an amount not to exceed $55,000 in settlement of a case filed in the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1891.
Bill 1891, resolution further amending resolution number 886 of 2021, effective December 27, 2021, entitled Resolution Adopting and Approving the 2022 Capital Budget and the 2022 Community Development Block Grant Program and the 2022 through 2027 Capital Improvement Program by reducing Bridge Preservation and Restoration Fund by $49,052, increasing Swinburne Bridge by $157,548, increasing Lorimer Bridge by $800,000, increasing Maple Avenue Bridge by $170,000, and increasing Corley Street Bridge by $538,000.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1892.
Bill 1892, resolution further amending resolution number 797 of 2017, effective December 28, 2017, entitled Resolution Adopting and Approving the 2018 Capital Budget and the 2018 Community Development Block Grant Program and the 2018 through 2023 capital improvement program by reducing McFerrin Street, 2nd Avenue Bridge by $9,719.73, increasing bridge repairs by $9,361.10, and increasing Liberty Avenue by $90,358.63.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Need a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Need a motion to approve the invoices.
So moved, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Invoices are approved. Need a motion to approve the interdepartmental transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Transfers are approved. Need a motion to approve the P cards.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Need a motion to waive the rules of council to cover the cost of the public works vehicle that was over the weight limit on the
Second.
county road.
No, you need to wait.
Motion to
waive.
motion to waive the rules.
And I'll second, with discussion, Mr. Chair, please.
Discussion?
Where is it on here, Mr. Chair?
There are, I don't have it in front of me, hold on.
Is it under Public Works? I'm sorry.
Should be. There's
PA
about
courts and fine
five.
costs?
Yes, PA courts and fines.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The rules have been waived. Any further discussion on the P cards? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? P cards are approved. That takes us to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, which is chaired by Councilman Kraus. Our first new paper is Bill 1873.
Bill 1873, resolution providing for the issuance of a warrant in favor of Adler and Sons, Inc. in the amount of $8,900 for tree removal work at Dodds and Potomac Avenue.
Motion to approve. Very brief discussion, please.
Second.
Is anybody here for this? It's okay if you're not. Oh, come up, please. Good morning. Thanks for being here. And you've done this before, but if you just please, for the record, list your name and title with the city, please.
I'm Lisa Frank. Turn myself off. I'm the city's chief operating and administrative officer.
Good morning, Chief.
Brendan Katikia. I'm a capital budget manager in the mayor's office of management.
Hi, Brendan. Welcome. Good morning. So it seems kind of silly that I'm asking you to come up here for this bill, but isn't Potomac Avenue outside the city limits? Do we have parts of Potomac in the city? Okay.
Left-hand side as you're going to the city.
I truly had no idea. I thought all of Potomac was city limits, or I mean Dormont. That's my question. I'm sorry. I apologize for putting you
We
through
could have
this.
a sidebar on that one.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Are you here for other bills?
Any opposed?
Okay.
Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1874.
Bill 1874, resolution providing for an amended reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary design phase of the Maple Avenue Bridge project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $450,000, an increase of $170,000 from the previously executed agreement. This resolution serves to authorize only the amended reimbursement agreement or agreements at no cost to the city of Pittsburgh. Future resolutions will authorize the project-specific service agreements.
A motion to approve. Very brief discussion, please.
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Yeah, Chief, are you here for these as well? Yeah, I kind of figured. There's a lot going on here, so you might want to stay with us for a while, huh? Anything you wish to offer on this?
No, though perhaps it might be worth council understanding why Brendan and I are here. I think people know that Director Lucas is off on parental leave. Deputy Director Scalican is on vacation, and the acting for today, Eric Setzler, is testifying in court. So, but we're well briefed and ready to answer your questions.
Okay, great. I have no questions on this specific. I'll turn it over to other members if they would.
Councilwoman Gross.
Hi, thank you. So we're talking about Maple Avenue Bridge, and I was rifling through my papers here a minute ago trying to figure out the bill from the previous committee that was moving money to the Maple Avenue Bridge. So can we kind of look at both of those together? So what I have in front of me is the text file from 1891, and that was the one that said it was a CDBG monies reducing bridge preservation and restoration by 49,000 and increasing Swinburne Bridge by 157 or so, increasing Larimer Bridge by 800,000, and increasing Maple Avenue Bridge by 170,000, and increasing Corley Bridge by 538,000. And the reason I got a little stuck on that is I don't understand how we can be increasing by over 3 million when we've only decreased something else by 50. So, like, where did the money come from? Like, I'm used to seeing these charts zero. I mean, we can't be transferring the money in from nowhere. So I'm just confused by what's happening.
So in this case, there is money that is exogenous to the city's budget. So there is money where it does net out exactly to zero, where there's city money that we're shifting around. In the case of the Maple Avenue Bridge, this is new money being added to the city's budget that is entirely from PennDOT and the Federal Highway Administration. So that's why there's not a decrease that you're seeing somewhere else.
So
And
that's
that math doesn't work
good.
out perfectly.
But the legislation should say that. Should it not, right? Or is that the companion piece that we're on now that says it?
So we always do a budget amendment if
Like
we're
a-
receiving additional money to add to the budget. So in this case, there isn't really a complementary piece because we don't have this money that we're receiving and going to use in this agreement with PennDOT elsewhere.
I'm still a little lost, actually. So, right, so back to 1891. And then what is the bill with Maple Avenue that we're currently on?
1874.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to flip to that one too. So there's external money, thank you, which is good. But again, back to the first bill in the last committee, if you're increasing those amounts significantly, right, under the with the JDE account information, we're still supposed to know, and the public's supposed to know, where it came from. And we can fix this by Tuesday, but you can't just be coming from nowhere. And our budget office can help us figure it out over the weekend or over the week too, before we get to Tuesday. And then this one is 1874. And so we're again adjusting it seems like we're doing the same thing twice, honestly. We're adjusting by the same amount for Maple Avenue. So I feel like maybe it's just me, but maybe we need to kind of double check these and see that we're leaving we're voting appropriately on taking money from some JDE accounts that we don't have in front of us to put them into these JDE accounts for these bridges, and then also whether we need to be saying it twice. Or the second one, I get we're just paying the money. Well, again, I think this needs to be sorted out. I mean, I know we're on live TV, and so I'm not going to ask you to do it in live time, but can we double check these before Tuesday?
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to give provisional vote. These are obviously really important projects. They're all bridges. We asked you to do this. The public wants you to do this. You're doing this. That's all great. But I just feel like it's not reflected adequately in today's agenda and the text files. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Second round, Councilman Cross?
Okay, thank you. Is it perhaps that we're not showing that that the legislation shows we're receiving these funds? If I understand you correctly, Brandon, right? Brendan. We haven't quite received these yet.
Correct.
Is that it?
The metaphor here is sort of you're putting your sock on, you're putting your shoe on, and then eventually you're going to go for a jog. So the budget amendment piece is sort of putting the sock on. So that's new money that we're receiving that we don't have yet, where there isn't accounting information yet, or the legislation is actually establishing the dollar amounts and the accounting information.
But not the authorization
Correct.
to receive.
Correct. Well, the agreement with PennDOT then establishes we're going to enter into a contract with PennDOT that will let us use that money.
So
And
then, I apologize. does that then come back to us? Yeah, okay, so I think that helps the councilwoman with her question in that it ultimately comes back to us to approve the receipt of the funds coming in.
Yeah, there were 3 different passes with City Council. One is actually amending the city's budget so that we have the money recorded to our books. Then there is the agreement with PennDOT, which is kind of like a grant agreement that says, okay, now city, you can use this money on an agreement with a consultant or a construction contractor. And then that actual authorizing resolution to use the money for construction or whatnot is the 3rd pass. So eventually that will come to you all as well.
Okay, and so then that theory, I can't think of a better word, help me, that process, thank you, thank you, process is reflective throughout this series of bills that we are discussing today. That help?
I don't need to know it right now.
Okay, all right, we're good. I'm good. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1875.
Bill 1875, resolution providing for an amended reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary design phase of the Corley Street Bridge project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $790,000, an increase of $538,000 from the previously executed agreement. This resolution serves to authorize only the amended reimbursement agreement or agreements at no cost to the City of Pittsburgh. Future resolutions will authorize the project-specific service agreements.
A motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1876.
Bill 1876, resolution providing for an amended reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary design, final design, utility, right-of-way, and construction phases of the Swinburne Street Bridge project, and providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $14,909,000, an increase of $12,559,000 from the previously executed agreement, reimbursable at 95%, and the municipal share of Commonwealth incurred costs not to exceed $16,250, a $12,250 increase from the previously executed agreement.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1877.
Bill 1877, resolution providing for a contribution agreement or agreements between the City of Pittsburgh and the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the SR 4003 East Street and Evergreen Road project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $31,500.
To approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1878.
Bill 1878, resolution providing for an amended reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary design phase of the Larmer Avenue Bridge project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $1,600,000, an increase of $800,000. This resolution serves to authorize only the reimbursement agreement or agreements at no additional cost to the City of Pittsburgh from the previously authorized $1,500. Future resolutions will authorize the project-specific service agreements.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Second discussion.
Discussion.
Great.
Councilman Wilson?
Actually, I don't have a question about this bill, but I missed my opportunity to ask a question about the last bill. I doubt there will be a change, or I'll ask for any motion to reconsider. But this, if you allow, Mr. Chair, on 1877, I just had a question. What is the project? East and Evergreen Road project?
That's a PennDOT restoration project, and it involves doing some, working on the signals and whatnot. And this is, I think, fairly typical. We work with PennDOT's procurement processes, just low bid and all of that. We prefer, even though it's PennDOT's project, to make sure that the signal equipment that they're going to install is what our folks know how to handle. We've got the right tools for it, so we're not having to understand multiple signal systems. And the way that we handle that is to do a little costing and sort of pay what we estimate the additional cost to PennDOT would be. So that's what this is. Okay. The restoration project itself is paving and, the usual PennDOT road restoration project.
So it's signals and paving. I'll contact Domain. To get a little more understanding of the project, but the 31,000, what does that cover?
That covers the estimated difference between what it would have cost PennDOT to essentially purchase their signals and poles and switches, to instead use those that our department understands. And it is really our belief that those efficiencies, by just having people have one set of things that they do and knowing how to do them well, more than pays for itself.
All right, great, thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Kraus.
Thank you. Just because we're in the midst of this conversation, very similar project taking place on 18th Street. The signal replacement from Carson to Amanda in Mount Oliver, and the coordination with all of the signals that we use citywide so that there's a cohesive pattern, if you will, throughout the city. One in particular, and this might be helpful to you, Chief, is at 18th and Josephine being installed. One of the very first things I ever did as just a engaged member in the community was to petition for a signal at 18th and Josephine. That was 20 years ago. It's 20 years in the making, but any day now that signal is going to launch, actually come on and make a whole bunch of people really, really, really happy. Probably if there's anything I've gotten beaten up more about, well, the top 5 things that I've gotten beaten up about in the years I spent here is the lack of a signal at 18th and Josephine. So it's a really, really good day. And I appreciate all the efforts of PennDOT and the city to coordinate that project and finally bring it into fruition. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1880.
Bill 18, I didn't read 79.
79.
Oh, sorry.
Bill
1879.
Bill 1879, resolution providing for an amended reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the multiple phases of the Liberty Avenue Highway Safety Improvement Program, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $7,505,556, an increase of $100,000 for the right-of-way phase for the previously executed agreement. This resolution serves to authorize only the reimbursement agreement at a cost to the city of Pittsburgh of $5,500, an increase of $1,000 from the previously executed agreement. Future resolutions will authorize the project-specific service agreements.
Motion to approve, please.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1880.
Bill 1880, resolution providing for a supplemental agreement or agreements with Zatola Construction for construction services associated with the Allegheny Circle Phase 2 construction project, providing for payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $2,890,945.46, an increase of $252,945.46 from the previously executed agreement as previously authorized by Resolution 670 of 2020.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1881.
Bill 1881, resolution providing for a contribution agreement or agreements between the City of Pittsburgh and the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the SR 60 Thornburg Bridge project, providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $24,700.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1882.
Bill 1882, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of public works on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into an agreement or agreements or the use of existing agreements for the professional construction management services for Homewood Park infrastructure upgrades between the city of Pittsburgh and Cosmos Technologies. The total exceed cost is $288,133.28.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1883.
Bill 1883, Resolution amending Resolution Number 386, effective June 19, 2019, as amended by Resolution Number 70, effective February 18, 2020, entitled Authorizing the Mayor and the Director of the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement or the use of existing agreements between the City of Pittsburgh and Pashak Plus MTR for the professional landscape architectural services for Southside Park Phase 1 design at a cost not to exceed $400,000 by increasing the total allocation by the amount of $61,220 for a new total of $461,220.
Motion to approve, very brief discussion, please.
Second.
Thank you. So, Chief, this is a really good day for the passage of the design phase for Southside Park. Lots and lots of people are going to be very, very happy that that's moving ahead. Have you had the opportunity to meet Kitty Vagley and Friends of Southside Park? She is a locomotive. And the Friends of Southside Park, Kitty Vagley, yeah. You'll cross paths sooner or later, I guarantee that. And the Friends of Southside Park volunteer organization, and very, very, very much engaged in bringing that park online, because we have very limited green space in Southside, as I'm sure you're aware. So the allocation of the funds to do the master plan is very, very welcome, and people are extremely excited and happy to see this happen. So just want to put that out there and say thank you. Yep. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Strasburger.
Thank you. I'm excited on behalf of everyone in the area because I too have visited Southside Park. I think it was before the goats did their thing, Allegheny Goats Gate.
Goat Fest.
Yeah, and it looked like a prehistoric park. It was just covered with vines, and I think to be able to transform it into something more usable is exciting. Is there, I mean, I understand that, and I've worked with Pashak before. They do great work. Is there any sense of what we might see there in the future, or is that literally what this phase is about, to determine what this looks like?
Yeah, pretty much. That's what it
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, congratulations. Look forward to seeing the results of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That moves us
Thank
to
you
our
for being here this morning. Appreciate it. Very
Land
much.
Use and Economic Development Committee, which is chaired by Councilman Wilson. Our first new paper is Bill 1893.
Bill 1893, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of city planning to enter into a professional services agreement and/or contracts with HR&A advisors for the purpose of assisting in the development of a strategic plan for the Department of City Planning, cost not to exceed $109,000 over 1 year.
Motion to approve, discussion.
Second.
Discussion, Councilman?
Bring in the.
Is anyone here to discuss the payment?
Morning, Andrew.
Morning.
How are you?
Good.
Morning.
Andrew Dash, Deputy Director, Department of City Planning.
Thanks, thanks, Director, for coming. I wanted to just ask about the payment here, cost not to exceed 109. Is this our first payment to HR&A?
So this would be for the entirety of the strategic planning process. So the idea is that, you know, in advance of the city kind of going through a comprehensive plan, really being able to set ourselves up to do that work by starting with the strategic planning process, where we talk, you know, this work would then help us organize our staff, you know, for that work as it comes. And also, the directors talked, I'm sure, a lot to you all around the just transition, and so looking at how the city integrates the just transition into the internal work of the department is a part of this project as well, the strategic planning project. And so we'd be looking to do this over the next 4 months, you know, with council approval. We did receive a grant from the Heinz Endowments for a portion of this project.
And that was the previous, right?
And we did get authorization from you all about a year ago,
Yeah.
I think, to accept that grant. But then went through the procurement process with OMB, received, I believe, 9 responses to that, and going through the review process, determined that HR&A was the best fit for us to move this project forward, and coming to you for authorization to go under contract.
So, apologize if my next question was covered in the briefing yesterday that I, well, technically wasn't allowed to attend, since when we do briefings, you know, for the public's know, we can't have more than we can't have a quorum, so we can't have more than 4 members at the meeting. But I'm setting something up for next week with Director Abrams, and I'm sure you'll be there too.
Yeah.
And so looking forward to that. But so I just wanted to state that first. But okay, so but 109, that's not going to be the whole cost, right?
That's the cost of the strategic plan. So the comprehensive plan is a separate. You know, so the strategic plan is really internal. You know, we will.
Oh, so
there will
can you
be.
explain that, how the strategic plan will relate to the comprehensive plan?
Sure. So the strategic plan is really to kind of organize the mission and values for the department, to organize our approach to the just transition, you know, and how we look at issues of justice around, kind of, both racial justice and climate justice, I think primarily through the just transition lens, and how that organizes the work that we do. And then, this is really to set ourselves up so that we can, be able to organize ourselves under that, both in the work of the comprehensive plan, but also in the work of the other work that, that planning is and will continue to do during that period of time. So although the comprehensive plan will be the main project that the department will be, out in the communities working on over the next 2 years, there are a lot of things in our development review priorities, implementation of existing plans, of that really have to still be done. And so the idea is that, working with HRNA, who has done, similar work for a number of other cities and done work in Pittsburgh as well, we'll be able to kind of set us up to be, organized in a way to really take on all of those challenges. And so, as a part of the strategic plan and the kind of organization there will be both discussions and work internal among staff, but then also with you all as council members, with, the other departments, as we try to think about, kind of how those relationships for both the comprehensive plan and otherwise are formalized as we then look to launch the comprehensive plan in 2024.
Does this strategic plan will it be evaluating any staff, the lack of staff or revision of current staff positions?
It could make recommendations around that, yes. Or it could make recommendations around, the organization of the 5 divisions that we currently have, and just how we, and how we operate. So, I mean, it could make recommendations to both organization as well as staffing levels, yes.
Okay. Is there, at the end of this strategic planning phase, will there be a report to council at all?
There will be, yes.
Okay, great. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation.
Thank you.
That takes us to Bill 1894.
Bill 1894, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of city planning to enter into an agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission for the purpose of receiving and spending grant funds in the amount of $20,000 with the local match of $50,000 for a total project cost not to exceed $70,000 to support planning efforts to create historic guidelines for 3 previously designated historic districts, Rosalind Place, Shinley Farms, and the Mexican War Streets expansion.
Motion to approve, discussion.
Second.
There's someone here that can speak to the bill.
Morning.
Hello.
Morning. You could state your name and
Sure.
title.
Sarah Quinn, I'm the preservation planner for the city.
Kevin Kunak, the Assistant Director of Public History, Art and Design for City Planning.
Could you tell us what's before us?
Sure. The bill is basically written to allow us to accept grant money that we won from the Pennsylvania Museum and Historical Commission. They're providing us $20,000 towards the project funds to write historic district guidelines for 3 neighborhoods that currently don't have guidelines at all. We're going to take $50,000 out of the city's budget to have a total of $70,000. Guidelines are important because what they are the baseline for neighborhood folks to go ahead and develop their projects that they want to do on their properties, their houses, their buildings.
Are we doing that work in-house? Is this money being spent in-house somehow, or like is this for just for costs of the I don't know, software you'd buy, or are we outsourcing this somewhere?
We're looking to hire a consultant for that. We are hoping to hire a consultant that has experience writing historic guidelines as part of a team that can also do public involvement. The intent of these guidelines is that they come from the neighborhood themselves, not something that we as the city or the consultant dictates to them. So we're hoping to find a consultant that can have potentially workshops or do surveys or things of that nature, have public meetings, has experience doing that, to bring the neighborhood groups together to develop the guidelines themselves with the guidance of a consultant.
And will we be coming back for more additional funds, or you think this is enough money?
Oh, I think this is enough money for the 3. What we're looking at is, these are the largest districts that don't have any guidelines at all. What we're looking for is next grant cycle, I'd like to apply for grant money to do revisions for some of the existing districts. East Carson Street is one of them because those guidelines haven't been updated since the mid-90s. Yeah, and we've got things like LED lights that didn't exist back then, but everybody wants to use them in their signage now. So sort of addressing modern technology is really important. So I think East Carson Street's at the top of our list to do revisions on. Manchester hasn't had new guidelines since the 70s.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
I will just quickly add that where these 3 guidelines will begin to kind of diverge from previous guidelines, and that public engagement will be a large process of this. So engage PGH pages through a consultant and through the city, registered community organizations. And these will, if you looked at some of the past guidelines, they're very heavily text-based, and this will start to include illustrations that should make it clearer for homeowners and residents to, proceed through the Historic Review Commission process. So.
Yeah, actually, we did a template for new guidelines. In the Allegheny West neighborhood, we paid for those ourselves. And right about the time that they were supposed to become public is when COVID hit. So we're working on getting the neighborhood caught up on those. But eventually, those will get approved by the Historic Review Commission. And that's what we want to use as a guide for moving forward on the new guidelines.
All right, thanks for your time.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Sarah. Good morning,
Sure.
Kevin. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
Publicly, I'll put on record, I will support you in a budget allocation for those funds to be in this coming year's budget, so that we can revisit the historic guidelines for East Carson. East Carson, some members may not be aware, is on the National Historic Registry as the longest Victorian business district in the nation, and that it was listed nationally in 1994. And it was a different time in 1994 than what it is in 2024. 30 years? 30, is that, oh God, I'm terrible at math.
I hope it's not 40.
Yeah, it could be, right? 94 is 40. Isn't that terrible? Okay, we'll leave math behind. But yes, I will gladly support that, and perhaps maybe you and I, since it is budget season, please, Kevin, you as well, could take it offline, decide exactly what the amount is needed, and then I'll petition the administration for that. Okay, thank you. In terms of what's before us today, I am shocked. I'm just shocked that the Mexican War Streets, just as an example, it does not have guidelines in place for their historic preservation, and never has had guidelines, right?
No.
Well-
no? Oh, okay, I might be confused.
Well, the older part of the Mexican War Streets has guidelines, and I'm sure you remember
Very well.
the expansion that was done several years ago. It's that area that we're going to be looking at.
I see.
And one of the things that the community brought up during all of the debate about whether the expansion should occur was the fact that the expansion area, the folks there didn't want to lose their sort of bohemian artsy flair to their neighborhood and be beholden to such strict historical guidelines. So that's sort of what we're looking at now. We have Randyland. You know, Randyland is within the expansion area, so we want to make sure that we have guidelines specifically written to the concerns of those folks there, and not necessarily apply the strict guidelines from the old area.
Were you on council when that all took place? You had just come on council,
I was.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mind?
No, please.
Because I was going to bring this up, and just for colleagues, when the Mexican War Streets expanded, there was a petition done that council also actually had to vote on. At that time, when we had the public hearing, everyone who was in favor of the expansion of the historic district lived in the current district. Everyone who spoke out against the expansion lived in where it was going to be expanded. So this council voted against approving it. However, we got sued, which is how the expansion actually occurred. I can't think of his name. He wouldn't mind if I used it, but he used to live in the Mexican War Streets. He sued us to expand it, and then moved, and now lives in Squirrel.
I know.
I thought he lived in Shadyside. Anyway, I can't think of his name. But that's how that expansion occurred. So what I was simply going to also add to the conversation was, as you're going about working on these guidelines, keep in consideration that those in the new historic district never wanted that, in part because the current guidelines that do exist within the historic district are so arduous that no one could really deal with those. And so there was also legislation, and help me out because I can't even remember what it was called now, that I introduced that instead of doing historic districts, we should consider it's a different type of district. It's
Conservation districts?
Conservation districts, thank you. Which are much looser in nature that allow you to not be as strict as a historic district, but rather be a conservation district, which protects you against demolition and things of that nature, but keeps the context of the neighborhood. Go ahead, Councilman.
You're gonna keep me up at 3 o'clock this morning trying to think of the name, and it's gonna pop into my head, but I know exactly who you're referring to. And Doug was president then and took us over there for the public meeting.
Yeah, the public hearing was actually at the church in War Street.
You were very new to the council then, were you not? Like first, second year or something when that all took place. God, where was I going with that? So in terms of collecting input, is it limited to registered community organizations, or no? It is not. So it's going to be a broad swath of input.
Yeah, I mean, what I can tell you is that you know, the Mexican War Street expansion area doesn't have an RCO there. So really what we're going to do is get the consultant.
Yep. Who is it? Kirk Berkeley.
Did you say?
Kirk Berkeley.
That's who sued us.
I'll sleep tonight. Yeah, that's it.
We're gonna use the public involvement firm to be as thorough as we can. To make sure that they collect data from folks that are within the district. You know, one thing we did find is that working on the Allegheny West guidelines is the folks that live in the district are very sort of reticent to have anybody outside the district make decisions for them. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But we're hopefully gonna go well above and beyond the normal expectation for public involvement on this.
You know, I just want to take the opportunity to thank you both for the work
Sure.
that you do and the value that you bring. You cannot duplicate history, and what's wonderful about being a East Coast city like what we are, and the rich history of over 250 years of existing, I forget exactly the number now, is that we have these magnificent pockets of architecture and you know that contribute to the uniqueness of who we are, and it speaks to our history and where we've been and where we're going, and it's just such important work, and I'm so very glad we have good, strong leadership in there to assist us in that process. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll just take the opportunity. Has anything ever happened with the establishment or the guidelines to create conservation districts?
I was working on some things under the guidance of our director, Karen Abrams, and I think we came to a place where we needed to have some meetings, and I think the comprehensive plan has sort of taken control of the calendar. So I'm sure if you brought it up to her, I can certainly bring it up to her.
We can follow up.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we don't have conservation districts in the city, so we actually have to create guidelines for them to exist, and then in order for someone to then say, I would like to have a conservation district. So that's where we've been for a while now, but we'll follow up. Okay.
Yep.
Councilman Warwick.
Good with that.
Yeah, so I guess just for my understanding, so you have a designated, so a neighborhood or wherever is designated as a historic district, which then puts limitations on what people can and can't do to the buildings in that district?
Well, the way it works is an area is nominated, and if it's listed, the requirements are that any exterior alterations to the building are they fall within the historic district guidelines or the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. So yes, so with this project, what we're coming up with are the guidelines, are the rules that the applicants and owners within those areas need to follow.
Right, okay. I understand that. So I mean, I guess I'm just kind of thinking, just in terms of the process for, I mean, I guess just would jump to mind immediately is as we're kind of looking to make it easier to build more housing in neighborhoods where the neighbors may not want more housing. If this process, not the guidelines, but if this process could sort of create like a loophole for neighbors to block that kind of work from being done.
Well,
just something to think about.
Well, the guidelines don't do anything related to use. They don't, all it is exterior appearance of buildings. So what it would be was, does the front door of this house, when you want to change it, does it fit in with the neighborhood? Or if you're going to put a new front porch on?
Okay.
What we expect is when there's a vacant lot and somebody wants to build an infill building, that building needs to be compatible with the design and style of the neighborhood and the scale of the neighborhood.
Well, see, that's what
those sorts of things. But it doesn't affect use. There's nothing related to use.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, it's just something to think about, like as we have those
Yeah, I think
conversations.
the use would be related to zoning.
I know. Yeah,
And,
I'm just.
different use categories within the zoning code.
Yeah.
In residential districts, but not
Windows and doors.
so much about the design.
Councilman Strasburger?
The door has now been opened. It would be interesting if, I understand it's not going to be a final result of this, but it would be interesting if we're going to engage residents who live in these districts, and there's going to be a public engagement process, even if it does not touch zoning. If baked into the process or the engagement, there could be some acknowledgement or a conversation around the future of cities and the future of, say, ADUs or other types of housing units, and what single-family housing and its impact on the city does. Just an idea. I'm not saying this has to be part of it, and it can open up a can of worms that perhaps you don't want to have. But just a suggestion, since two of these fall into the district I represent, and I struggle to have the background and authority to have conversations with residents in these historic districts who take, rightfully so, pride in the historic nature of their houses. And there are conversations happening in cities all across the country, including ours, about how we can, even within the historic nature and the zoning of these districts, work within that system to creatively find more housing opportunities.
We'd be happy to facilitate that, yeah.
Thank you.
We're not going to shy away from the hard questions. So, yeah.
Or even, like, I know it's not, again, it's outside of your purview, but the conversations around, transportation and parking and assumptions around, all that is tied up into living in a historic district that feels a little suburban in a city, right? All of those conversations are hard, but maybe this is an opportunity. Okay, thank you.
Second round, Councilman Cross?
Yeah, thank you. So, love this conversation. So as someone who owns and lives in a house that I believe was built in 1867, I think that's an accurate description of my house. I have a great love for history and architecture and what it brings to quality of life here in the city. The question I have is this. Let me add this as well, too. We're redeveloping the Belts-Hoover School with the guidance of a gentleman named Andy Haynes. And the approval plans that we have is to take this incredibly beautiful historic building that we believe was built in 1903 and add an addition to it, which is going to be quite contemporary in nature as a means to complement and not to try to mimic in a false way the beauty of the original architecture. So what I kind of would like to put out there just for thought is that neighborhoods this is a question, could neighborhoods ultimately decide in their guidelines that for infill housing they could approve more contemporary buildings that are complementary in nature and not necessarily attempting to mimic the history of the architecture?
Yeah, one of the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation are what all of our guidelines are based on. Those are straight from the National Park Service. And one of the things that they sort of focus on is when you're doing a rehabilitation project and you want to do an addition, it needs to be compatible and not
compatible is the key word.
Versus exact. You want to be able to tell that it's a new addition. So what you want to do is make sure that the addition is, it's not so large that it overshadows the original structure. You want to have materials and colors that are compatible. So you don't necessarily need to have a brown sandstone addition, but you want to have something that's of those similar in the similar color palette.
So to assist Councilwoman Warwick with her line of questioning, which I'm glad she brought to the table, is that historic guidelines do not necessarily need to interfere with our vision of a city for all and for providing shelter, unilaterally across a multi-spectrum of need.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate the conversation. And I'm glad we had it. And thank you for your remarks, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson?
Yeah, two things that I was thinking about as the conversation continues. One was, you have this new expansion into the War Streets, and you mentioned Randy Land. Like, we have to prepare for how that will fit into the new expansion. In other places, Mattress Factory, City of Asylum. So, with that, a lot of those came out of a time like they started out of a time when there was more vacant property in the neighborhood, and now that's changed somewhat, but there still is other opportunities that could take place for people to be more creative. So I'm interested to see how you balance that. Second, I'm not going to name the neighborhood, but I've been to a historic, they have their own committee, a local historic review. And the decision that came out of that was interesting because the homeowner was requesting, they want to get approval for windows on the back side of the house. And they went to the window company and they recreated the window, but they recreated it so they wouldn't have to paint it. I can't remember. I think it was just like aluminum cladding on the outside. And that was a no-no on the back side. And then they wanted to continue to guarantee that on the back side they would still have painted windows. I'm hoping we can give some variance to individuals since those windows, to the upkeep on wood windows like that on the back side of the house. So I know that might be very specific to that one case in that one neighborhood, but just as we move forward, there are cases where there's windows on the back side that people will never see. It's not, doesn't show character in the front of the house, and it could save people a lot of money to, windows are expensive. I recently got a quote for some windows, and
insane,
it's quite pricey.
Right,
and I know it's going to be a challenge for, individuals that have a current existing home and they bought the house recently and they want to get it fixed up, on the front side. That's going to definitely be a lot of money to have the window company recreate that. But on the back side of the house, I think we should give more lenience and more variance to what's decided, what's acceptable.
Well, we only review things that are visible from a public right-of-way.
Okay,
so that would be the alley, the sidewalk.
But still in the back of the house with an alley.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what these neighborhoods are comprised of.
I think that one thing to remember is that the guidelines don't come from the city. The guidelines come from the neighborhood. And there are certain neighborhoods in the city where they want to be really strict about what they allow people to do. We've been pushing them to use newer materials. For example, in Shenley Farms, there are composite windows that are made now with wood, I want to call it wood shavings, and like not a fiberglass, but like a plastic, that are really, really good windows. And they're good because most of our old-fashioned wooden windows have very, very slim details on them. And the composite windows are allowed to replicate that, so they look very much like original wood windows. So I think part of the process of putting these guidelines together is trying to work out some of those things like you mentioned.
Okay, well, just as long, I'm not sure if that's in the ordinance that they have to, that down to that
it's
that fine detail
guidelines.
that it's completely community driven and not, not some rational, reason to do something that we can, get it done somehow. But just as long, I think the more people that are involved in the process, then you'll have a product that
Yes.
will be representative, that will help individuals instead of trying, put them behind. So thanks.
I agree, it's going to be a challenge.
Mr. Chairman, I register aye votes for the remaining bills. Thank you.
We know you're talking about Allegheny West, Councilman. Councilman?
Yep, thank you. So, I guess my question is this, so you're gonna do a community engagement. And what if the community split? Who makes the decision whether to designate it or not?
Well, we're only working with districts that are already designated.
Oh, I thought we were expanding.
No.
Oh,
no.
that's, we can't do that yet. Okay.
Yeah.
These are just design guidelines for
Oh,
already
okay.
established.
Okay, well, that
Yeah.
answers that.
Yeah.
And my next question is, when somebody purchases a home in a, one of the places that are restricted, does somebody inform them? Is there some sort of guide to let them know that, hey, if you're not going to be able to change it into a modern day, future looking home because you're in this district, or do they have to learn that the hard way when they want to try to do something and then realize that they can't?
Well, ideally, their realtor would let them know ahead of time. I've done training classes along with the URA for realtors in the past, and it's sort of worked out well. I can tell you that the zoning office does closing documents for every real estate transaction, and there is a questionnaire as part of that. And is this property in a historic district? Check yes. So every property should have that.
So there's written something
There's-
in writing
yes.
that states this is a historic. Now,
Yes.
the onus is on them, I guess, to figure out what does that exactly mean. We don't give a descriptive like, hey, you can change the doors on the front, but not the back of the house. Or,
But there's an opportunity to do that moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, what I can tell you is some neighborhoods have local review committees, which are advisory groups formed of the neighbors in that neighborhood, and sometimes they will go ahead, because they know when things are getting sold. They'll go ahead and contact the new owner to let them know, put some paperwork, and there's a door hanger or something like that.
I think the best form is, like you stated, if the real estate agent makes them aware of that. And I guess it's up to us to make sure that real estate agent knows to pass that information along.
That would be ideal.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're the ones showing the house. They're the ones talking about the neighborhood. They need to, if somehow we could require them to make sure that they inform the new homeowner that there are restrictions here because it's designation.
Well, and it's something that should, if a existing homeowner is selling their home, they should put that on their disclosure form as one of those things. Just like if you have a roof leak, you need to disclose that. Whether they do or not is another
You have a roof
question.
leaking?
No, I don't. Thank you for asking.
So, okay, now I just didn't want the homeowner, the new homeowner, to be like, thinking they have this big grand idea of making it this Jetson type of futuristic building when they in fact can't. That's all. And I just need to know that we're informing them, whether it be through the real estate agent or something in writing, in one way or the other.
And I think to your point, there's always, ways that we can improve our processes and always looking for ways to do that.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilman Kraus.
One last thing, I promise. But I don't want to let the moment pass, being that I have very limited time left to be at this microphone. The days are, like the hour, or the sand through the hourglass.
Take full advantage of it, aren't you?
That's your future.
But when the what is now known as the Convention Hotel was first built, it was the Vista International. It was owned by Hilton. And I was in my late 20s, and I actually worked there with Randy. He and I waited tables together at the Vista International in mid 80s, something along those lines. So I've known Randy for many, 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 many years, and one of my most favorite and eclectic people that I've ever come across in my life. So just want to put that out there. I'm done. Promise.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Oh, okay.
Where are we at? That takes us to 1895.
Bill 1895, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of City Planning of the City of Pittsburgh to enter into a professional services agreement with Michael Baker International in an amount not to exceed $25,000 to complete an architectural survey of the Crawford Roberts neighborhood.
Councilman?
Is this mine?
No, it's
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to Recreation,
You gotta have
Youth,
them
and
add
Senior
the
Services
time.
Committee, which is chaired by Councilman Strasburger. We have one new paper, Bill 1899.
Bill 1899, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code of Ordinances, Title 4, Public Places and Property, Article 11, Parks and Playgrounds, by adding a new Chapter 481, Use Regulations, providing guidance for development in parks and greenways.
Motion. No, it's contagious. Motion to approve. Discussion.
Second.
Thank you. I want to defer to the bill sponsor, Councilwoman Warwick.
Yeah, so thanks. This is a bill that my office has been working on for a long time, ever since I got here. And thanks to everyone who was able to make it to the briefing a couple weeks ago. I think it was nice to be able to sort of talk it through. So basically, the essence of this bill is that it would prohibit any kind of development in city parks that is not directly related to the public's enjoyment of the park. And it came out of, as you may be familiar, my neighborhood and lots of folks around spent about 6 years fighting with the city about the city's desire to build a shuttle road through our local park, even though at the time, so, you know, and my opinion is that's not a fight that residents should have to go through, right? Our city parks are arguably our most valuable asset here in the city, from, you know, a health and wellness perspective, from just, you know, from a property value perspective, right? If you're adjacent to, I mean, that's a huge asset for a neighborhood. And also just for Pittsburgh, just being a great place to grow up and all of that. So, yeah, happy to go into the details here with any questions. But and then also this bill, because I have so many parks in my district, in particular Hayes Woods, which is a new park. It's sort of trying to be forward thinking with these new city parks. To say that, you know, because, you know, we may not be here in 50 years or whatever, but to make sure that should there be an administration or a city council or a city council person or whomever, right, that someday, you know, Hayes Woods, we have this new 600+ acre park, and someday, you know, when the 31st Ward has become a bigger neighborhood and someone thinks, oh, wouldn't it be nice to, you know, build a road connecting it to the south side, wouldn't that be convenient that, you know, Hayes Woods is off limits, that is something we're preserving for the long term. So that was sort of the thinking behind this, and with that, I'll say, you know, any questions, happy to answer any questions I can.
Thank you. Councilman?
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't attend the briefing, but it's that shuttle road is probably why you're sitting here today, I believe, right?
Yes.
It's inspired you, did it not? So good job in stopping that. But I guess so my question is this. So it's kind of vague. You said about, you know, can't build in the park if it interrupts with how they residents use the park. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it would prohibit development in city parks that is not directly related to the public's enjoyment of the park.
Got it.
Yeah.
I guess it just seems like, you could say anything's directed to the enjoyment of the public, even if it's a patch of woods in the far corner, but
Well,
that's...
this would specifically be city parks.
Yeah.
So if it's a city park, and greenway, yeah.
Yeah,
if it's
well,
a
greenway,
city-
that's my next question. Greenways are not parks, right? All of our greenways were designated as parks.
No.
I'm not sure about that. I don't believe so.
They're zoned as.
If we're gonna have it in a row,
Yeah.
Well, this is not, so this is separate from being zoned as parks. So if it's, this doesn't apply to like non-city land that is zoned as park. Okay. Yeah.
I thought greenways were parks now. I thought
Not all of them.
I don't believe
Not
so.
all of them. Only the ones that are like ready to be.
Councilman, our solicitor believes he can speak to it. You want him to come to the table?
If you know anything about the greenways being parks, I mean, I don't really have any other questions for Councilwoman Warwick over it, but I thought, at least in my district, I felt like the greenways were designated as parks.
I mean, there's designated greenways. Yeah, but a greenway is also designated by the city.
Right, and the greenways, I think, are restricted before we were even designated parks where you can't build on them.
I think that's well, I think there's.
Counselor, what do you got for
go
us?
ahead.
Well, I think some of what your legislation attempts to do is clarify a gray area.
Yeah.
And dedicate a greenway if it's in that gray area. So it's not in a gray area anymore. So I know we're talking about greenways, I'm using the word gray a lot, but that's kind of where we're at, is not all greenways are parks. However, when we start to put things like equipment on them or designate them as an exercise area or a place for the public to use them, that's when we get into an area where we might have dedicated it as a park. And so a lot of it comes down to the public reliance and whether there's this perception. So because that creates ambiguity, I think what this legislation is attempting to do is remove that ambiguity, or at least give them a tool to remove any ambiguity. But not all greenways are designated as unbuildable or parks. Some greenways are there to help with landslides, some greenways are there to deal with density, and then some greenways are there to be used essentially as parks, but they haven't been formally dedicated as parks. And so that becomes somewhat problematic, and there's a need then for clarity when you have like bike exercise courses just pop up in the greenway, or when people start to build private pools for themselves in their greenways, or build driveways for themselves in our greenways, and so many other things that people tend to abuse a lack of that clarity. So I think that's what this legislation attempts to do, is kind of give the appropriate department the power to clarify, is this for public use or is this for some other kind of greenway purpose? So,
Do you know if there are restrictions for to build on greenways?
there can be, but there aren't.
Nothing in
not
place.
automatically. No.
Interesting. I thought differently. Okay.
And one thing too so there are some exceptions in the legislation, right? Things that, so obviously if there is if there's an existing road through a park, if you have existing structures, whatever,
Like
businesses
grandfathered
that
in,
are in the park,
basically,
right?
yeah.
Like if it's already there, then it's fine. Existing utilities, that type of thing. There's also exceptions for public safety. If you have to do something to support a bridge or prevent a landslide or something like that that requires you to build, then that's obviously an exception. There's an exception for maintenance of the park. So if DPW needs a space within the park to house vehicles and things that are used to maintain the park, that's another exception. And there's also an exception for commercial establishments that directly support the enjoyment. So with that, we were sort of thinking, for example, if you had a kayak rental or something like that, right? Something in the park that made it nice, which is why we specifically said for the public's enjoyment of the park as opposed to the good of the park, which gets a little murkier, right? And when it comes, and I think that there will be situations down the road where it is a little murky, right? Like, for example, say someone wants to build a rec center in a park. That will create a great, is that rec center part of the enjoyment of the park? Would it better be in the neighborhood? And that, but that, I think, is a healthy community conversation to have around those types of things. But what this bill does is expressly prohibits, very clear things, new housing developments, roads that are connecting two neighborhoods, or any number of other things. A casino, I think there was a casino planned for Hayes Woods at one point in time, so.
It's really protecting against big development. We don't want somebody coming in and putting a housing complex or things of that nature.
Or even, if there's I'm thinking of Shenley Park, right, where we have lots of, we've got universities and we've got FIPS, and we've got all these things around Shenley Park, and, it's always tempting to sort of build something in there, but if it's not expressly for the public's enjoyment of the park, then that would be a no-go, right?
Well,
that's what the parks are for.
I, for one, am thankful for the legislation. I know in my greenways, they're just trail clearing, basically, cutting trees off trails. They're very sensitive about anything going on inside that greenway. We want it kept natural, which I do too. So.
And I think, too, the nice thing about this bill is that again, in District 5, we have a ton of park space. A lot. So, but, if there is a space in a community, right, even if it's just like a little city, if the community wants to designate that as a park, they can come to their council member, they can cut, you know what I mean? And then they've got this right here that says, look, this has been designated as a park, and then this protects it for the long term, so.
Good deal.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to Intergovernmental and Educational Affairs Committee, which is chaired by Councilwoman Gross. Our one new paper is Bill 1872.
Bill 1872, resolution providing for the issuance of a warrant in favor of the Allegheny League of Municipalities in the amount of $9,000 for annual dues for direct membership.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That exhausts our agenda. We do have meeting announcements. This afternoon at 1:30, council will hold a cablecast public hearing on Bill 1666 as it relates to the Allegheny General Hospital Master Plan. Speaker registration closes today at 12 noon. To register to speak, please fill out the sign-up form on the council meeting webpage. You may also call the clerk's office at 412-255-2138. Also, this Thursday, September 14th, council will hold a virtual briefing with sessions at 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. relative to Bill 0270 on regulating short-term rentals. Next week, council will hold our regular and standing committee meetings on Tuesday, September 19th and Wednesday, September 20th at 10 a.m. Speaker registration will close at 9 a.m. on the day of the meeting. To register to speak at these meetings, please fill out the sign-up form on the council meeting webpage or call the clerk's office at 412-255-2138. Also on Tuesday, September 19th at 1:30, council will hold a cablecast public hearing on Bill 1841 as it relates to liquor license, Amboy Restaurant LLC. And on Wednesday, September 20th, council will hold a briefing with sessions at 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. as it relates to August 23rd, 2023, Garfield standoff shooting and the Smithfield Street incident, which occurred on August 25th, 2023. Is there anything from members? Councilman Wilson.
That you mentioned was a briefing on a short-term rental. It's a briefing on the new rental registry bill.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, incorporates all rentals.
Anything else from members? If not, motion to excuse the absent member, approve the minutes, and adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye. We are adjourned.